I want to automate the craziest thing in like that you could imagine, it will say sure.
Mine doesn't. I hope yours doesn't as well.
It's like a little bit like you're building a skateboard instead of a rocket ship. It's done.
I think it's more than that.
Human hallucination versus AI hallucination, and,
Yeah, absolutely.
and which one wins?
Combination is a symbiosis.
Who do you trust if this is such a moving goalpost?
I'll never put my name in any contract that tells you that you can automate it. Like,
guys, we're here with Miguel Marreiro, a former aerospace engineer who now is working on AI implementations for a range of different companies and organizations. Miguel, great to have you. Thank you for joining.
well, thank you very much for the invitation. It's always nice to talk with you.
Absolutely. And now we're going to talk about AI projects. We're going to talk about things that companies want to have AI do, what realities of the AI implementations are, and all the things that are maybe not true necessarily, but people believe in. First things first, we talked about the project. You mentioned one of the projects that you've been working on. It was a news-related one. Can you tell us what it was in basic terms? What was the project? What did you do? How did that go?
So this project is for a local newspaper that exists in the area of Oeiras for 50 years. And they have a tremendous corpus of social and cultural relevant information that is not really accessible for population, journalists, researchers. And the goal here is to bring that information back to the 21st century. So my approach is to get all the digitalized versions that are in image PDFs, hard to access, not centralized, not accessible to the public, and process all of this data. I've generated pretty much a pipeline with a couple of models and built the harness around it to be able to identify articles, separate the articles, extract information like names, dates, tags like places, people, and generate a searchable database where people can instantly filter through places, decades, and any topic that they want to find information on these newspapers. If you can imagine being a journalist trying to find information about Tagus Park or Passiarcos, and or something very specific, and you have 50 years of newspapers that are either a printed edition or a non-searchable PDF image. That's an absolute nightmare. And now you can have just like a web app where you have a database behind it, and then you can immediately filter all these results.
As someone who lives in Paus de Arcos, I think that's great. I'm going to be one of the few users immediately. So I really like that a lot.
I'm happy to hear that.
So that data was not online, or some of it was online. It was different places, and now you're putting it all in one place, searchable, and it's going to be available for people online. Or would you kind of characterize it a bit differently?
Well, for that, some of that data was online because this is a lot of volunteering work. So like some of the digitalization of it was done by batches in different formats.
Sure.
They live in different places. It's not centralized. It's not standardized. It's
everywhere.
It's a nightmare. And so the current stages, I'm doing that for the association so that they have their own archive, and these would be accessible to researcher journalists. A second stage, I'm ongoing planning and conversations with agents from the municipality to propose a broader platform where this resource would be available online for the population or within the ecosystems of the libraries of Oeiras.
What is the difficult part, without maybe going into all the technical details, what is the difficult part of doing that with LLMs, with bots, not bots, with agents? What are the difficult parts to make it work? Is it reliability? Is it verification of information? Is it the search that works correctly, or all of the above and something else?
Well, for this case, you're talking about 50 years of a magazine that's very graphical and that does not have a consistent graphical design. And so you don't have a pattern that you can codify Like, so I tried first traditional OCRs or lighter weight LLMs with terrible results.
They're actually pretty bad at OCR.
They are terrible. I was
I tried
shocked.
it too. Yeah.
I was, it was a lot worse than anything I expected. And until a year, 2 years ago, the technology was about training models, like refining models for that application, which was a huge ordeal. And for the last 6 months, we got to a point where medium models, well, quite good models, but not frontier models like Sonnet, with a good set of harness and very well structured and codified input and output structures, can do most of the work with an acceptable error rate. So getting so the biggest difficulty in this project is you cannot standardize it. You need to codify it very well so you can design the harness to and now it moved a lot of the load from having to train models to just building the correct pipeline and being reliant on expensive models. Because if you're talking about 50 years of newspapers, you're talking about tens and or hundreds of thousands of pages that a model like Sonnet will take 2 to 5 cents per page, and if you have to run it multiple times during your pipeline, and if this is for a local newspaper, that becomes the problem. Now becomes financing.
That's really costly, actually, even with
It is.
Sonnet.
It is like because it's heavily graphical.
Yeah.
Like it's if it was text, it would be trivial.
Right.
But this is like a magazine, very densely with a lot of dense imaginary.
And what is the workaround? Do you like, what is the version that actually works, or you imagine, or you can envision that works, that is reasonably economical and it could still provide the value? Is there a version like that, do you think?
I think for ongoing work, the current Sonnet approach, you're talking about maybe a few euros per edition, which is, I think, is perfectly fine. When you're talking about these massive archives, it's definitely, because if you have someone, I would say 2 years ago this was not really possible in terms of the cost of developing. Now it becomes possible, but there has to be financing, because it got to a point where you either paying tens or hundreds of hours to a developer to do all that intelligence to try to apply Quen models or other open source models, it will become more expensive than just running Sonnets or something equivalent. Of course, I don't know, like in a couple months, maybe this value will change, sure, of course. But right now, I think the key is that you're turning projects that were not feasible economically before, and you are making them viable with these technologies. For companies, definitely, I would say more expensive models are the way to go, because the cost of development is far bigger. Because you need to validate the validation, the intelligence. Like, you need to be very careful with how you structure the constraints on your model. Like, your inputs and outputs have to be very, very clearly stated. Your harness has to be very good for you to be able to expect to put thousands of documents and have something usable at the end. Does not require you to validate 10% of them. Because if you need to directly validate 10% of that, like, this entire is a non-starter. This model is a non-starter.
What about this? So with this project, you're setting certain goals, and at the beginning, and then you're testing it and you're seeing what's possible, what works, how are the tokens spread out, like how does it work? Did the goals change as you've been building the project? Have you been testing it and you've seen what works, what doesn't work? Like, how did that evolve from the very beginning of the early goals that you had to where you are at the moment?
It did, especially with the interest of the people around.
Oh yeah.
For sure. I think in the beginning was something of, I want to have impact. It's where I was born. I want to have impact in the community there, and I have a personal interest. And so in the beginning was maybe, okay, I want to play around with vision models and see what's possible, and then now this is becoming actual viable, and this is when I really picked it up. But it's viable for like a local server,
Uh-huh.
and as other agents around became interested in the project, this can be actually a full-fledged service for the population, and definitely there's a lot of expressions of interest from part of the community to make this a bigger project, and this is where I started to shift and really start thinking about like what would a SaaS and the platform would look like,
Right.
and how can I make that happen, because he went from a point that now becomes to be financed, and it has to be an actual project, and we can do it. It's like something that a company, most companies that do this kind of work would have to charge upwards of 100,000 euros to do it.
Absolutely.
And with these approaches, you can bring that cost substantially lower, but it's still a
It's
cost.
still a lot of
It's
work.
still a lot of work, and it's still.
Now, we've talked about, before we got rolling, we talked about certain misconceptions that clients who are looking for AI services have, and there's some really interesting ones that you have mentioned. What are the biggest ones? I mean, you are working, you will be working with a range of different clients, different companies. They're looking to automate things, they're looking to rebuild the processes. Some of them don't know what they're looking for, which is quite common. What are the biggest things? Maybe we'll start with the first one or two, or the first two misconceptions that clients have or companies have with AI. I know you have a different range and some really good examples. You could pick whichever one you
Oh
want
god,
to start with.
I think there are a lot of them, and that's the thing. Like this entire field industry is not very well defined, and it's especially not well defined in the minds of companies, like professionals. They are very focused on what they do. That not everyone has the motivation or the time to keep up with what's happening, and it's surprising because of course we are inside of this bubble, and you go to these meetings and you are incredibly surprised with the most basic things from your point of view that people are just not aware is possible, so they don't know what to ask for.
Yeah, I was going. I've been going to AI meetups here for months in Lisbon, and last year too. What I was so surprised by is exactly this point. It was not on the client side; it was on the community side. How massively spread out the knowledge and understanding was. Like certain people are unbelievably advanced on a certain thing of like, oh, we're going to do this, use these agents, and they're going to be narrowly focused on working through a specific enterprise problem. It's a very narrowly focused task, and they do it, and it works well. Other people are building, oh, we're just going to build a to-do list, and that this is really great. Like, it's a to-do list. It's a built-in functionality. And there's just such a massive range of these concepts and like people not understanding where the value is. I'd imagine for business owners and for people who are running companies, it's even not worse, but maybe even more blurry. Like where exactly is the value? What is $10? What is a 10,000? And what is $100,000 when they're talking about automating certain things?
Yeah, for sure. And it's also hard for you to have a comparison point from this, because the costs for a lot of these tools were just too big for a company to even consider them. So there's definitely a huge gap between where the technology is and what companies understand they can do with it. And also there's a massive spectrum of the kind of people with the kind of approach that's offering. It's not like a standardization of what people are doing. And there's a lot of things that you need to be careful in this space.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a. My approach right now is, it's in terms of value, where to find it, and it's about if you can codify it, you can automate it, and I think a lot of the value where I'm focusing is when a company is hiring a specialist, when you are paying premium for this person critical thinking. You want this person doing that during the entire day. You don't want this person to be doing repetitive, like low value tasks. Even spending, if on average someone spends half an hour a day fetching files from a server, this is absurd. Like if you have 100 specialists working for you, and each of them spends 1 hour just navigating directories to get the information they need. Like the end of the year, you're talking about tens of thousands of euros, if not a lot more. So why don't we have tools that understand the context of what you're doing, and it keeps always the relevant internal documentation on hand?
But isn't the challenge, as I see it, and I'm curious how you see it, because you've been working on all these projects. Yes, there's like a lot of things that you can automate, but there's a very different degree of knowledge of certain people who run these AI implementations. Some people know how to do it well. Some people ask AI to, and they tell like, "Oh, I really know it," but I'm gonna just secretly ask ChatGPT how to do it. But it's like, how does that integrate into the bigger ecosystem that the client has? How expensive will it be? How well does it talk to other systems, and how expandable that is? So it's like, a lot of people, what I find, don't think about that architecture. They think like, okay, we have point A and we're going to connect that to point B and it's going to be fine. Well, yeah, it is fine for maybe a month, but then there's a lot of other things that potentially you want to build on, and maybe that process is going to be isolated, or it's not going to work well, or that person or that company leaves and then it breaks, and then now it's like a lot of these. I don't know if it's failed necessarily implementation, but it's not a very good automation.
Yeah,
and from a client perspective or from a company perspective, it's like, who do you trust if this is such a move-in goalpost? Like, how do you know? And it's a lot of work, isn't it? Like when everybody's saying like, "Oh, break-in, now you can automate this and automate that." It's like a difficult one to find who to trust.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. I think the first thing is there has to be a great effort in communication and proper scoping, and you need to go into their processes, sit next to their specialists, see how they work, and be able to codify it to try to implement something that will seamlessly interact with their current workflow. I'm not a $1 billion consultant company that comes and does a complete overhaul of your entire business. Like that's not
exactly
what I'm doing.
Exactly.
I'm coming and I want to create something that has to be adopted. If there's no adoption to what you create, if it's more friction than what their workers and their staff, they will just put it on the side. There's no point on doing it. So you have to make it easy and as seamless and as the most compatible with their own workflows as possible. This is one of the main targets of anything I do. And another thing is about the client not really understanding or not being conscious or not be fully into like what the implementation is and how do you achieve that result, because they're not used to it. I think a lot of companies, either they have pressure from shareholders, oh, you need to automate, and most importantly, a lot of them are realizing that the ones that don't will be eaten by the ones that do. It's not about replacing specialists. It's about leveraging them, that your specialists are doing 5 times more than what the other companies are doing. This will give you a market advantage that you cannot compensate for. And I think a lot of companies are realizing this, and they know they have to move, and then they don't know how. So I think a huge work is on the consulting part, that going to these companies, analyzing their processes, and identifying where there is potential to improve, to cut, like to free your workers, your staff, your specialists to do what they are critical thinkers on, and where do they generate your value. And here, one of the there are 2 issues in this the 2 big challenges that I've been facing in this communication. One is clients want to save time, and so we are starting for what they want. Like they want to something that will save some time, and then you work back from there. Like how can we integrate it, and what do we need to build that intelligence that is going to deliver that improvement? And a lot of time, the ugly work is on that part, because that work is collecting data, is processing their data, is centralizing everything into a knowledge base that can be exactly the platform to build new intelligence. As you said before, it's not just about automating one thing; it's creating the pillars and the basis for future development and consolidation. And this is, for many projects, this is going to take most of the time and most of the budget. And none of this is saving the client's time.
And clients don't like it.
It's a tough one. I've had the more friction in communication I had with clients was with this, because not only is not saving them time already, it's also using their time, because again, we are codifying for something in their field, but they are the specialists on their field. So you need time for one of their specialists to work with you to validate your approaches, your strategies, your mitigation strategies, and to do a review of your databases and the deliverables. And so for this huge part of the process, like, you're taking their time before you actually start saving their time.
It's like a lot of this boring work that is not related to any intelligence or AI intelligence that needs to be done.
Yeah, it's fundamental for it.
Right. That is quite frustrating. Where like I'm paying you, like client is, I'm paying the money, and we are not even getting to that intelligence. Like we're spending all this time. But that's the thing. It's a you have to do that to build an infrastructure to put it properly together. Because could you automate something quickly? Yes, but it's going to be an isolated process that probably will be outdated super fast, or it'll break.
It's not just that. It's about, like, okay, you go to implement something, how critical it is for your company. Like, what is the error rate that is acceptable for this project? And depending on the answer, like, your strategy and your approach has to differ. Right? If you want 0% error rate, the implementation is very different than the 95%.
Yeah.
And is a lot more costly.
It takes a while too. Like you need more you need more discovery with the client to understand how these things work, and it's not just like, oh, how technically it could work. Like there's a understanding the process really well.
And again there's validation.
That's
like
what I mean.
That's the core. Like it's automating fast, but you don't trust the results. Like, what's the point of that? Like, if you get to a point where you start needing to validate everything you automate, very possibly you're going to get to a point where you doubt everything. It actually is costing you time, because then you have two pipelines and you're just going to drop the tool.
Well, isn't that what happened to a lot of enterprise companies, or the companies that jumped on this automation super early, where yes, they automated things, but then what happened was exactly that. It's like, yeah, we did automate it, but then our employees, our like people working there, were like spending so much time trying to revalidate if this is actually true that it didn't really work.
I mean, like, we all heard the examples of huge consulting companies that were using the wrong numbers for a full trimester before they realized that everything was and it's super easy. You tell a model, doesn't matter how good the model is, you tell it to complete a spreadsheet, it's going to complete the spreadsheet. Like, that's what you asked him to do.
That's the thing. Like that's what I've been saying as well. The beautiful and the bad and not beautiful thing about AI is, well, it will never say no. You can say, I want to be a billionaire. I want to automate the craziest thing in like that you could imagine. It will say sure, and it will build an MD file.
Mine doesn't. I hope yours doesn't as well, because we worked in our own harnesses and instruction sets, and we tried the best we can to take that out of the. But, like, for example, for this newspaper, I have a case that I lost half a day. I lost like 5 hours on this. That one of the output JSONs was like working perfectly. I was improving the prompt, and then out of nowhere it was adding like 20 completely hallucinated lines at the end of it, and I couldn't understand why. And after hours, I found a paper about the specific tokenizer that was used for that specific model, and about the extreme weight that tokenizer was attributing to specific tokens. And so the token complete was so strong that, because I did like kind of like this, it was in Portuguese, so I said to extract the complete body of the article. And because that token was there, it went against all my guardrails, like all my instructions to just take like byte by byte. And it just decided that I wanted it to complete the article. So it started writing. Like, this is like any other field. Like, you have specialists for a reason. Like, a lot of this work, if you have a smart person that wants to invest thousands of hours in it, you can get good results. But you need to be able, it's very, very tricky to predict some of these behaviors, and the good part for me and gives me confidence is like what I can do now versus what I could do 2 weeks ago versus 1 month ago versus 2 months ago. It's so much better, so much more reliable what I can do now. And
it creates a challenge though with on one side, in a client's mind, in a company's minds, well, you can automate things pretty quickly, but the value is in the nuance, understanding these little things that make a big difference in reliability, in consistency. And like the token example that you said, so it's like, this project does cost that much. You don't just automate it yourself, or you don't go to your automation specialist and they do it. They could, but it's not going to work in a certain way. So in a client's mind, sometimes the ease of that automation creates this perception of it's very easy. But actually, on the projects I've worked as well, it's actually very hard to make it reliable, to make it actually do what you need to do. And I think that nuance sometimes is not, the client doesn't know that there's quite a lot of work to make it work.
But my approach to this has shifted greatly. I went from really trying to achieve 99.99% reliability to an approach where I'm trying to move from production time to validation time. So it's not about automating a critical task. It's about something that takes your specialist 6 hours to create becomes 20 minutes to validate. So for critical tasks, I'm focusing a lot more on this implementation than trying to achieve something that can automate 99%. So I think for most tasks, this is a better approach than full automation. Of course, it really depends on the task. It really depends on your pipelines, etc. But for anything that's like that, for many companies that are not built AI first, which are most of the companies, they will not have the infrastructure to reliably automate critical processes.
Right. Yeah, and it's like a little bit like you're building a skateboard instead of a rocket ship, and it's okay. Like skateboard still has 4 wheels and it's rolling, and you're getting things done.
I think it's more than that. Like as a company, you have all of these years of experience accumulated on these specialists. Like you want to use it. This is your advantage versus your competitor. It's not that if you're using Opus and they're using something else. Like you want the tools to leverage the knowledge and the IP of your company. So if you're just automating it based on some database, I think it's a big mistake, because like if companies lose that intelligence over the years, something changes in 5-10 years and you are in extremely fragile position. So I don't think it's about removing specialists out of the loop. Like my approach, I do think it's about keeping the human in the loop. It's not about firing people. It's like, of course, like you're probably going to hire less, but the thing is like companies that can elevate their staff and make them more efficient and more productive are just going to be able to outrace all the other ones. And so fully automation, like you're not training new people, you're not bringing new creativity to your own field, because most of these companies, their field is not AI. Their field is something else.
Yeah.
So you need to keep bringing smart people in. Like you need people in these tasks. So
yeah, there was a misconception, isn't it, where like, oh, AI is going to replace all the people, which actually doesn't. It won't necessarily. It's like it just allows you to do more. You had goals that were high or that were extreme. Well, now some of them will be achievable because you will have ability to use your knowledge, the things that you have built as a company for years, better. And there's certain things that you could automate. And if everything is working well, and if people are in the company adopting AI in the right way, well, you're going to be doing things better. You're going to be doing things faster. But not everything can be automated. Not everything will be replaced by AI, and not necessarily
Not
people.
everything should be.
Exactly.
But I think like a lot of people put it man against machine.
Yeah.
But
No.
that's not the fight here. It's man with machine against man without machine.
Exactly.
This is going to be a tremendous gap.
Yeah, totally. It's a big difference. It's going to be a
Absolutely.
big difference, and
Absolutely.
it makes sense. I think where I've seen on LinkedIn, there's a lot of people who really don't like AI content or AI slop, and they're like, "Oh my god, this is just so ridiculous." But that's not AI does a lot of other things.
Yeah, of
That
course.
are extremely useful.
For me, like I almost don't want to use the term AI. I really don't like to use it. Like I was talking with someone at the conference, and then halfway through the conversation, they asked me how do I change the company's culture, and I was I don't. Like that's the opposite of what I want to do. I want to save them time. Like anything that's like changing their behaviors is against of what I'm achieving to do. And then I realized that he just thinks that every AI or anyone who works AI, what they do is go to companies to teach them how to use ChatGPT. And
Yeah, exactly.
that's so far from
Yeah.
what I do and what I want to do that I really don't want to use these terms. But again, this is what a lot of stakeholders think they want. There's a lot of pressure to go that way when in reality what you're trying to do is to use the best tool for the job to make your company as efficient and optimized as possible. In reality, most of my deliverables and like finished products have zero AI because for a lot of things, running something on top of LLM is not deterministic and it's going to be more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so many things like badly formatted data. Like AI is amazing for this. Like natural language intake. There's like data, like finding statistics connections in your
Yeah.
business that you were not aware of. Identifying correlations. I don't know, like
Yeah, it's this cross pattern analysis is unreal. Like when you take a lot of different sources of data and ask AI to make sense of it, and if the model is good enough, there's connections that are just so extraordinary. Like sometimes, especially business related, especially if it's like important data, which it will be because it's your internal data that you've been collecting, you get unbelievable and real intelligence. And there's a tremendous value. Could you do it yourself? Yeah, but like nobody has like a week or 2 weeks to just go through all this stuff like manually, and I think that like inference that's done well is very useful.
and there's another layer to it. We are very biased as human beings.
That's true.
We see the universe and everything around us through our senses, and we are more in tune to certain patterns.
Mm.
But different AIs are going to be more in tune with different patterns that are not obvious to us. So we are going to catch things that a computer will not, and vice versa. The computer will find things that we can't.
Human hallucination versus AI hallucination, and
Yeah, absolutely.
and which one wins?
I
Right.
think a combination is a symbiosis.
Yeah.
Hopefully a good one.
Yeah, it's true. Like people, a lot of people say AI does all this stuff like hallucinates, which of course it does. But like a human bias,
Yeah, of course.
nobody removed that one. What is the most okay? Well, we're getting close to the end. What is the most unusual request you got from clients? I know you mentioned it was something like was it like a $10? Well, like a very easy thing to automate versus something that was very difficult and there was like a gap there.
Well, I mean, this is a challenge again. The concept of where the cost and the time is on something. I had for a company where they wanted two different projects that have very similar value for them, but in reality, one of them is something that I could implement maybe in 1-2 days, and the other one was something that would take 6 months. But on their side, from their point of view, both of them have the same value. So how do you communicate this? How do you price this? It's a big challenge.
Yeah.
Something difficult to navigate. And in terms of like requests, I think it's like when someone sees like this any AI party trick, and you do this image and it does something that it took you hours to do, and then expect everything does the same when actually there's like a lot of data and knowledge base that you need to build to achieve something that's actually usable. Like a last example of this, I was in a big meeting with directors of the company, and we were like for 1 hour talking that they want zero mistakes, and I was presenting my mitigation strategies and how do we deal with this, and then 5 minutes later they asked me if they can 100% automate it. Yeah, you can, but if you are like in high school or something, and if you have like an open source no liability license, but I'll never put my name in any contract that tells you that you can automate it. Like always validate it.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's so true. There's a lot of these hidden parts of like a good, well done implementation. Understanding the processes, scoping it correctly, looking at like what's the maybe we don't even need to run LLM. We can do it in a different way. We could save a lot of tokens, and do we need it to be 90% reliable or 95%, or we are okay with automating 20 minutes of an employee check-in things is enough, and lots of other things that you mentioned. Miguel, thank you so much. This was
Well,
awesome.
thank you so much for the invitation. It's always a pleasure.